Nothing Phone 4B review. This is a great budget phone that you just can't simply get in the United States. However, let's talk about it here in this video for those of you who are interested in picking this up, and shout outs to Nothing for sending this phone out. I'm not going to do a full-blown unboxing, but you can see Nothing trademark right there. And this is going to be the white color. All of them do come in, they come in 3 different colors. You can get it in blue, black, and white. So we'll take a look at what it says here. You can pause and read it for yourself. But one of the things I got to say is I like how Nothing pays attention to the details, even down to the unboxing, giving you a little message. I know it's like minor, but it makes you feel like when you're opening a phone up that you're getting into something at least semi-special here. You'll see over here that we open this up, and you'll see this is what was on that was just the paper right there. But you'll find a cable right here, a SIM card tray right there, and that looks pretty unique actually. This is what I'm talking about. It's the little details with Nothing. No other SIM card tool actually looks that nice. So you can, or I'm not gonna say that nice, that's more subjective. I'm gonna say that unique. Most of the SIM card tools out there aren't gonna look like this. They're just gonna look a little bit different. So definitely you can see just paying attention to the details once again. So you get that USB-C cable, and also I don't have it in the box right now, but they did include a TPU case, and this is kind of important for a phone like this that might not have a massive case selection right away. So getting yourself a starter case in the box, pretty nice for this device right here. Let's go ahead and talk about the price here. It's going to be $399, but really you're not buying in the US, so we're going to convert that to pounds, 299 pounds on this one. So just look at it like it's a budget phone. That's what it is. Let's be real there. Now we'll talk about the overall key specs that matter. On the front here, you are working with a 6.7-inch AMOLED display. You also do have a 50 megapixel main camera on the rear with an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and its overall design is kind of giving that same shape that we found on the previous Nothing Phone 4A Pro. You'll see it right here. So if you kind of like that shape, and also you've seen some other phones that look like this as well at the camera area. A lot of phones kind of doing this at the top. So let me know which one you prefer more, the 4A Pro on the right or the Nothing Phone 4B. Now we also do get ourselves 8 gigabytes of RAM. We're gonna get ourselves a Snapdragon 6 Gen 4. So if I go to settings, you can actually just read these right here in the About Phone section. But you will get yourself a 16 megapixel front. Also, we are going to get ourselves 128 gigs of memory, and we do find ourselves a 5200 milliamp hour battery, Android 16 on board, 3 years of guaranteed updates, major updates for this phone. Pretty par of the course for some budget phones out there. So don't expect no 5 years. You're not paying flagship money, so you're not getting flagship level support. So it's acceptable. If you get this phone in India though, or the Indian model, you will get yourself 6000 milliamp hour battery. So you guys are lucky who are able to order that option. You are going to get yourself more. Now, let's talk about the body and the build. We are talking about a plastic build here around the edges of this phone, a plastic frame. The back is also plastic, and it actually feels that way. You will find this area to feel kind of similar to the Nothing Phone 4A Pro. Again, kind of just feels like kind of feels like plexiglass, honestly, but it's just a little bit smooth feeling right there. You'll see they have to minimize certain things. Like you're not going to get the glyph matrix. You're only going to get like some glyph lights right there on this device. And you're also going to find yourself a flash right there, a couple of cameras right there. But you will find that little circle right there. It says Nothing. Very similar to the Nothing Phone 4A Pro. I'm going to keep mentioning this a bit because they kind of are laid out similar. What is different is their volume rockers are not separated buttons. It's just one volume key, kind of giving a Panda Stormtrooper look there on the 4B. Let me know which one you prefer, but you'll find yourself a essential key, power button. Well, this is the power button. The essential key is on the left over here for the Nothing Phone 4B. It's a little bit higher up than the 4A Pro. And you'll see on the bottom, they look nearly identical. We do have ourselves SIM card trays on the bottom right there. That's going to be, if you have the phone forward, it's going to be the bottom left. You also have USB-C, speaker grills, and it's stereo speakers even on the 4B. Even at the budget level, it still gets stereo speakers, which is rather nice. Microphone holes up at the top. And overall, it's just, it's a nice phone for the price. That's the best way I could put it. One of the things, though, I don't love about it is that it has a chin. This is mostly due to the flat AMOLED display. It's not giving you a flexible OLED, so you're going to get the chin. You're going to get a little bit more bezel on here. And that's kind of like the only thing I'm not digging about it. Other than that, I think for the price, it's nice because it's not always about just the phone's hardware. It's about the software, and this phone really shines in that department. So we are looking at Nothing OS 4.1 on here. Let's go ahead and scroll down to About Phone. You'll see it right there. And it's really just a minimal software setup. It's one of the least distracting, I feel like, type of software on the market today. And they do throw in some glyph interface right here. So you get a few things you can do, ringtones, notifications. And that's what I really like about this 4B. While it is a cheaper phone in their lineup, at least it's still throwing in the things that you actually need to use every day, which when you're using it, you don't really think about the fact it's a budget phone. You just think about the fact that, yeah, I can still do Gemini. I can still do the AI stuff I need to do. I can still use the essential key. I still get the glyph lights over here. I'll show you what those look like right now. Let's go ahead and hold that down. You'll see them right there. I get 4 LEDs. And honestly, I think the back of this Nothing phone looks better than the Nothing Phone 3, which was a very controversial design. And that's their flagship product right there. So they need to clean this one up a bit. I think make it look a little nicer, because when the budget phones are starting to look nicer than the flagship phone, we got a problem right there. So I want to see that get a little bit cleaner and simpler on the Nothing Phone 3 while giving us interesting glyph and more glyph on there. So let's go ahead and hit this right here. You're going to find yourself SIM card 2, SIM card 1, so it's dual SIM support, but no micro SD card expansion. Or you're just gonna have to use what comes in the body of this phone. So let's go to storage here, scroll down, you'll see 128 gigs on board, so that's what you're gonna be working with. I think for a phone of this caliber though, that should be enough for most people. They're probably not gonna be taking as much pictures they would on a flagship tier phone, or as much high quality video as they would on a flagship phone. So I think it's a decent amount for this phone. So let's talk a little bit more about the display on this phone, the thing you're going to be looking at every single day. So we're going to go here to the settings. We'll go to display. We'll scroll down. You'll see you have adaptive brightness modes. You do have dark themes. You can also change the status bar looks over here. So you can add internet speed. You can add a few more things up in there, your LTE signals and stuff of that sort. Also, you can change the font size and display that comes with built-in with Android, but right here is one of the ones you want to pay attention to, because if you go into the Alive mode, the phone definitely brightens up a bit on this one. And let's go ahead and take a look at the wallpapers while we're talking about displays. You do get the Wallpaper Studio that helps you customize wallpapers with AI. One of the things I really like about Nothing though is they include some nice set of wallpaper packs in their phones. Definitely, and they carry on the old wallpapers that you'll find from the previous Nothing phones. Unlike Samsung, for example, who only will put the flagship wallpaper for the flagship phone, we do see ourselves, we do get to see a lot more wallpapers, and even the ones that were on previous phones, so they carry over. That's kind of like what Apple does. So let's go over here to layouts, and you'll see right here we can do 5, 4, and so pretty nice wallpaper pack for this panel. Now, the phone, one of the cons of this one, and it's not really a con, we have to weigh the price, we have to keep the price point in mind, is that this is an AMOLED display, so when you shift it on different angles, it does kind of get a little bit rainbowy looking. It's kind of a trait of a cheaper OLED, which is on here. You'll notice it if you've looked at high-end displays. If you haven't, you probably won't even notice it, nor will you care. Again, it's just something I can see because I've seen more higher end displays. I just want to point it out. If you're used to a higher end display, you might notice a little bit of color shifting on this phone. 600 nits of typical brightness. This thing could also peak out at 2000. That's only going to be triggered outdoors. I did find with this one compared to the 4A Pro, I had to crank this up higher to get more brightness out of it. It just comes with the nature of getting a lesser priced phone here, but I wish it was a little bit higher on the brightness. I wish it was more like 1000 nits. So I definitely noticed that about this phone here. The display also is a 2344 by 1080, so it is about 1080p resolution. So you do have to expect that you're not going to get the sharpest text out there. But again, it doesn't really even, I don't even really notice it to be like 1080. It just seems pretty sharp overall. And what's nice about it is a 120 hertz panel, so pretty good. It only has 480 on the PWM, so you could be bothered by this if you're used to Nothing's other phones, which go much higher than that in terms of their PWM rates. Just keep that in mind. But generally, it's a pretty solid display. It's a budget phone display. It's pretty noticeable if you looked at flagship displays, but it's a pretty enjoyable one. I'm not really annoyed with it. It gives me kind of like Galaxy A series like vibes in terms of the display. It's fine. I'm not disappointed. Some phones don't even have 120 hertz. So having this large panel, the only thing that's a downside to me mostly is it could get brighter, and it has a chin and a little bit of a thicker bezel, which kind of gives it this phone kind of feels like a modern phone with some old phone type spec on the display. That's kind of how I would say it. Now, when it comes to software, this is where the Nothing Phone 4B really shines. You are finding the Nothing OS, and really what it does is it gives you just a much simpler overall experience than you'll find on some of the other phones out there on the market. It's clean, it's black and white in the settings. You can also go ahead and customize this into the Nothing icon packs, which give you more of a black and white look. So I just like the whole vibe of just get to the point, do what you got to do, and then also giving you a little bit of uniqueness with the glyph lighting on the back. It just really does make these phones interesting, and I think it's a really good software for our modern world, because our modern world is just so overstimulating. And I feel like Nothing's approach is very focused on what you actually use and need. And they don't overbear you with features, but they give you a clean, simple experience that kind of flows in the background, but also looks sleek and modern as well with their layout. So I'm loving it. I honestly am. And I think it does stand out a lot from the crowd. Although for some people, it's just not enough. But I will say, if you are looking for a more of a minimal feel, a simple feel, and a lighter version of like Android, this Nothing OS is hard to beat. I think it's much better than what you'll find on some more bloated phones, especially in the budget arena. Because on a budget phone, you don't want the budget phone to be laggy, and when you start loading it up with features, some of those budget phones start to feel laggy. This one is not really one of them. You will find a couple of animation lags here and there, but that's to be expected. But nothing like you would think. This phone performs near flagship level when it just comes to daily tasks. Also, it does have an optical fingerprint sensor built in. Of course, not going to get ultrasonic at this price, and it is a bit lower than you'll find on some more premium tier phones, which will be a little bit more centered. So you gotta bring your thumb down, which kind of cheapens the feel a little bit, if I'm being honest. But it has it though. It gives you some features you probably wouldn't expect. They could have easily just put a hardware fingerprint sensor, or they could have easily just not put one and just left you with a password, which you'll find on some even cheaper phones out there. So just having a fingerprint under display, I like that. And when it comes to performance, I've been testing it. I really haven't found much lag on it. It seems to run Android just fine. I think the 8 gigs of RAM is really helping it. Also, the Snapdragon 6 Gen 4 is an octa-core CPU, so it has plenty of cores to keep this thing running pretty smooth. It also didn't get too warm, so I like that. But yeah, you can definitely play your games, run your apps, even run some split screen, no major issues on this one. Again, really all I really found was that things were a little slower to load than you would find on a flagship phone. And also, maybe you would find a little bit of slower animations from time to time. Yeah, you will close out some apps if you're running too many at once, but this phone, for what the price is, was actually pretty impressive on the performance. So I'm not too disappointed. And honestly, I think it performs a lot better, mostly due to Nothing's optimizations and software compared to a lot of other budget phones. So I do like this a lot in the area of performance. Now let's talk about the cameras. I can't say I'm loving the cameras, but I gotta say that what they've done with these cameras is pretty incredible for what this phone is. Yes, 50 megapixel camera, but the way it processes it makes the images look very tack sharp. Now, for some people, they're not going to like this over sharpened processed look. They're going to think it's horrible. But I think for most people, including myself, I tend to sharpen photos up after the fact. So I really like what Nothing's doing here. But generally, if you like a more natural image, you might not love these cameras. but they are good for a budget phone. You wouldn't expect them to be this tack sharp, honestly. So I'm not disappointed. But if we go over here to 4K and we go over here, you'll see we're topping out at 4K 30. And again, you can't ask too much at the budget price tag, but there's always room for improvement. They could throw 4K 60 in the future. If we go to more, you'll find modes like night mode, slow motion, expert modes, and dual video. So just your standard affair, but you'll also see that they do keep that general minimal theme even here in the camera. Now I like that as well, because when you are busy, you're out and about, you don't need an overwhelming camera setup. And this one's not one of them. You also get an action mode, which is something you don't always expect to see in a budget phone. And of course, you'll have these different type of presets you can do to find the perfect type of shot you want. So I think they're adding what you need in a phone at this price, but you should just not expect flagship or even mid-tier, mid-range type phone photos. It's just not going to give you that. But it does give you a pretty sharp front-facing camera, and it kind of carries over that kind of sharpened look on the photos. But overall, I'm going to say it like it is. For the $399 price tag, I think most users will get on just fine. You will notice if you zoom in on the photos that there's a little bit of noise when you zoom way in on products and things. But for what this phone is offering you, nice camera looking design, it's better than I thought. I thought I was going to see some weaker images, but no, it was pretty good. So I enjoyed it. I think it's good for the price. One of the best things about this phone is that because it's a lower tiered chip, has a huge 5200 milliamp hour battery, the phone just lasts and lasts. It's an extremely long lasting phone due to the lower power, and just overall this phone, it has really optimized software. And one of the things I like about Nothing is they keep enhancing the software. They'll just throw out more frequent updates than I even find sometimes on some other makers, smartphone makers. So I like Nothing's focus, and they do tend to fix things as they become problems pretty quickly. So they've been doing pretty good on that front, and major updates kind of more depend on when Google gets finished with the major Android updates, but eventually they get around to it as well. And 3 years major, this should hold you over for quite some time. So decent overall on the software update front. Now audio, I found the speakers to be a bit tinny. This is a budget phone. They were just a little bit, they could use a little more bass and a little bit more richness to them. They just kind of sound a little bit tinny at high volumes. But the thing I was a little bit shocked by is having stereo speakers, but also having loud stereo speakers. These were very loud. Just didn't sound the best. But at least you have stereo speakers, and you're going to be able to hear people just fine. Now, when it comes to connectivity and phone calls, you're going to get pretty good phone calls serviced here. You're going to get Wi-Fi 6. You can get Bluetooth 6.0. So plenty of decent stuff there. The overall phone doesn't charge the fastest in the world either. Again, we're not looking at a mid-range. You're going to get 33 watts, but hey, 33 watts is better than 20 watts. So I'll take what I can get on this phone. And so let's just wrap it up here. We talked about pretty much everything we needed to talk about with the Nothing Phone 4B. I think what it is a really solid entry-level phone. Definitely for the Nothing brand. I think it allows you to get into the Nothing experience for a lot cheaper than you'll find on some of the other products, and does it in a very convincing fashion. I mean, if you take a look at this to the Nothing Phone 3, I think it hangs up there with it in looks. They're keeping that design language pretty similar. You'll see it looks a lot closer to the Nothing Phone 4A Pro though, right here. And I think it's more like a better version of last year's 3A Lite. So this was a decent phone as well. So I think that looks pretty good as well. But that Nothing Phone 4B holding its own, I would say, for $399 right there. So let me know your thoughts. I would say the only cons to this really are what I mentioned earlier. Kind of the bezels are very thick. Maybe if you don't like a plastic phone, it's probably not for you. But generally, and the fact that it's not in the US, I wish this was in the US as an option. But overall, a solid phone right here. It's just a great budget phone. You just can't buy easily here in the US. But if you're not in the US, if you're in the UK, Europe, or India, you got yourself a winner here. At least an option you should consider for if you're looking for a phone in that like $299 or $399 price point. So thumbs up if you enjoyed the review video. Sometimes I like to cover these phones that we don't always cover, the typical Apple and Samsung. So let's go ahead and give a like for that. And if you want to see other phones that I haven't covered from the Nothing line, go ahead and drop those down below in the comments section.